Welcome to you again in Omote-sando and online. My name is J.Y. Lee, and I'm the church historian here at Tokyo Union Church. On Palm Sunday, today, Christians celebrate Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem. Palm Sunday begins the last week of the season of Lent. During these 40 days, Christians enter into and embody the suffering of Christ. We do so that we may love God and neighbors as Jesus did. At Tokyo Union Church, we've been reading the Gospel of Mark alongside Pachinko as our communal Lenten practice. We paired Mark with Jin Lee, not only because we're proud to call her an alum. We read Pachinko also because her novel about migration and discrimination explores faithful response to suffering. Perhaps the pervasive Christian themes in Pachinko are not surprising given Min's remarkable commitment to Christ. Every day before she writes, she reads the Bible for inspiration. Min and her family have also been exemplary in their service to Tokyo Union Church. During their years in Tokyo, from 2007 to 2011, Min, her husband, friend turned husband, Chris Duffy, and their son Sam served as ushers and homeless ministry volunteers. Chris also served as the vice president of the congregation, while Min was interviewing Chinese Koreans in Japan to rewrite Pachinko. After her debut novel, Free Food for Millionaires, put Min on the literary map, Pachinko turned her into a global icon. Pachinko was nominated for the National Book Award in 2017, and the New York Times hailed it as one of the best books of this century. I'm joined today by Min's friend, Kathy Masui, whom Min thanked in the acknowledgments of Pachinko. Kathy has been a longtime member of Tokyo Union Church and a pioneering financier and economist. Min, we're so grateful to welcome you back.
Hi.
Hi, Min Jin.
Quite the introduction there. Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the time. Of course, we'd love it if you were here in person, but the next best thing is having you virtually online. I think the last time we may have seen each other, which is shocking, was 2017 when your book came out. You came to Tokyo for a book talk at the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan, if you recall. And of course, the book had just come out. It was already a sensation then, but gosh, not that much time has passed, but you're just a global icon, and just so proud of you and your accomplishments since then. I recall having time with Min Jin and her lovely family in Tokyo. Do you remember, Min Jin? You would invite us to your home for your delicious home-cooked dinners. I remember Min Jin in her apron, and she was so busy, making this most delicious cuisine. But your dinners were most memorable because you'd always have something interesting, like a trivia quiz at the end of dinner. And just, you couldn't just relax and, and digest your meal. You had to work. But that was Min Jin's forte. And I just wanted to kick off, Min Jin, by asking, because we have a big audience here in the sanctuary, and you spent so much of your time with TUC, do you have a favorite memory about your time at Tokyo Union Church? If you want to just share something that comes off the top of your head, perhaps.
First of all, I think the most important thing I want to say is I think it's weird how Kathy Matsui does not age.
Look who's talking.
You're beautiful then, and you're beautiful now.
Look at you, look at you.
I think that I had a hard time in living in Japan. I don't speak Japanese.
Yeah.
I went there first for my husband's job. So I was what you call a trailing spouse. And for me, I really missed my church in New York. So when I began attending TUC, I felt this commitment to making this a community for me, where I would worship God with everybody who was there in Tokyo, and we were joined as a kind of, I guess, a sacred citizen. It's not just Japan. We're connected, and our ethnicities and backgrounds are relevant, but it wasn't everything because we had this one unifying faith. And that was really important. And I'm very uncomfortable talking about Christianity. I do it usually under duress.
Sorry.
Just putting that out there.
Sorry.
And the duress is not imposed externally, it's more internally. Because I think the reason why I have all these anxieties about it is because I think I can be easily judged. Because once you tell somebody that you're a Christian, like everybody knows the rules. And I fall short a lot. So to answer your question about the favorite memory, I love serving the homeless sinners. I loved it. Because first of all, I'm very good at washing dishes. I feel very comfortable ladling curry on rice. And I don't have to talk. So I like the work more than the talking. And I never felt I was an adequate representative of the church. So even the ushering, oh my gosh, I really hated talking. So I would hand out a program, and then sometimes like they would make us, make the parishioners behave themselves. And I'm not the head of my relationship. And I remember once I had to tell one of the parishioners to like move in a certain way or she couldn't enter the sanctuary during a certain part of the service. And then years later, she said to me, I always thought you were that church lady.
You had a reputation.
Yeah, so then I ended up thinking like, oh, I'm right not to talk about Christianity. Anyway.
Great. Thank you so much.
But I do remember last year when you were interviewed with the book editor at the New York Times, and he was saying the Bible is not a very stylish book, but I thought you gave a very eloquent response to that. And the following question you've kind of touched on, in both Pachinko and Free Food for Millionaires, you have seamlessly woven faith into your writing. In an age when Christianity seems less in vogue, especially among artists, how do you navigate discussing faith?
I don't think I do it well. So I do it, again, under duress. Because I would never disavow my faith. So in public. But it would be easier if I didn't have to talk about it. Because among my peers, the fact that I go to church, the fact that I read the Bible 6 times a week is a weird thing. Because my books are not explicitly Christian. My books have faith in them. I have characters who are Christian in books. And the reason why I do is because I write about Korean people. And I've never met a Korean person who doesn't have an opinion on religion. So I'm not saying that all Christians are Korean or they're all Christians. That's not true. I mean, just statistically. However, it is something that Koreans think about, whether they believe in shamanism or Buddhism or Christianity, or if they're atheists. There's a deep spirituality of our people, and so I have to talk about it. And then in public, because I do this thing with the Bible, people always ask me questions. And then I end up talking about it, and people think I'm a freak. But
So we understand, Minjin, that your grandfather was a Presbyterian minister, and that essentially, like I just learned from JY and myself, we were born into sort of Christianity, or you inherit the faith. Was there, my question is, did faith come therefore naturally to you, or was it like in my case, you know, I was kind of forced to go to church when I was living at home, and then only after I became an adult, it really opened my eyes and heart to, I think, true faith. But what, was there like a defining moment in your life that said, aha, now I get it? Or was it just inherited, was it just in your DNA from day one? Can you just talk a little bit about that faith journey? I know this is under duress, but sorry.
no, how should I say this? My grandfather was a great man. So not only was he a pastor, he was the head of a school for orphans, for Koreans who came from Japan.
That's right.
And they were repatriated to the country. And he spent his life advocating for orphans. So as far as I'm concerned, it's one thing to say you're a Christian, it's another thing to live your life fighting poverty. It's you know, you're really doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I was growing up, I just felt, this is going to sound so completely strange, but I've always felt the presence of God. Even as a little kid, I just always sort of felt it around me. And it's interesting because I didn't have friends as a child. Like, I was very strange. And if you think about it, a kid who feels the presence of God is going to be strange. So, but at the same time, without friends, without the ability to, and also I didn't talk. I didn't talk very well. I could talk, but I really, really didn't talk. And yet, I remember having an unhappy childhood. And when we moved to America, we didn't have much resources. And again, I wasn't unhappy. Like, I always felt that I was going to be fine. And I do it's because I felt the presence of God. I mean, I still feel it now.
Thank you.
Can I just one more follow? So how does this sort of faith, what role does it play in your work? Because JY mentioned you read the Bible basically every day, 6 days a week, which is every day to me. How does that impact the work that you do as a writer?
Well, I really couldn't do the work that I do without having, for me, because my books are so big. And they take so long to write.
Yeah.
And require this kind of bizarre level of research and interviewing, and so many blind alleys. So many blind alleys that didn't believe that there was a reason why I should do this, then I don't think I can do it. I mean, I wrote Pachinko without an agent. I wrote it without a contract. Both Free Food and Pachinko. So nobody wanted the book. And also, I didn't have any connections in public.
Wow.
And I didn't know other writers. I didn't take class in a formal way. I'm a history major and I went to law school. So no one thought I was serious, especially in New York.
It's amazing.
I have a follow-up question about your grandfather. I think I've heard you share that he studied in Japan. I'm guessing that might have been during the colonial era. And do you know what that experience was like for him?
Oh, apparently he didn't have much money. So while he was going to seminary in Japan, he lived in a Japanese dentist's house. And he made tea. So I guess he did some sort of apprenticeship, which I thought was so interesting.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah. You refer to yourself as a late bloomer, Min-jin, but since the publication of Pachinko, your career has skyrocketed into international stardom. From the vantage point of where you're now, how do you feel God has led you?
You're not going to like this answer. I really hesitate to put a God stamp on my life. So, and I think that it's possible to say, I believe in God, and I believe that I feel this presence of God, which I can't prove to anybody except to me. As for where I am right now, it's hard to say if this is what God wants. Does that make sense? I do not explain that. Because I think we can always like look back and say, oh, I had to go through that, and that's what God wants. And I think that sort of reasoning is often used as a cudgel against people. You know, like, Kathy, if you think about your incredible career in business and finance, I suppose that's what God wanted. Then at the same time, like, how can we know? Right? It makes me uncomfortable. So I'm very frank about what I believe, but I'm not certain about saying, well, why did I miss the taxi? Why did I meet my husband? Is it because that's what God wanted? I'm like, I have a hard time with that.
Okay. Next question is from TC Elder Russell, who was actually the president of the congregation when...
He's there.
He's right here.
He's waving
Hi,
back
Russell.
at you.
When your husband Chris was the vice president. His question is, can you share a story about how your time in Tokyo and TUC informed and influenced your writing, especially Pachinko? We know you were doing your research here at the time, but...
Oh, it was so important. Because when I read the books about Koreans in Japan, it was so negative. It was only about oppression. It was only about the laws and the statistics, and all of that was true. However, the Koreans in Japan, almost all of them, the ones that I talked to, love Japan. They want to be Japanese. Like, they marry Japanese people. Some of them changed their citizenship when they could. They didn't want to go back to Korea. So for me, I had to take all that in. Like, and all the materials that I read were true, but the experiences of people were not in any way really reflected. And then so many of them had beautiful relationships with kind-hearted Japanese people who helped them. So these generalizations that fit neatly with historical proofs are inconvenient. And that's the space where a novel can fit in.
True.
Yeah, I went to the Japanese Korean Museum, History Museum in Tokyo yesterday in preparation for this conversation, and I was surprised by how bleak the museum is. I'm guessing you've visited Minjin, and
I've been there, yeah.
yeah, and then now they have a pachinko machine there, and they have a picture of your book there. I don't know if you've been there since then, but yeah, I think it was amazing how you really brought to life the experience of Korean Japanese people. It's more than the crucible experience of colonization and war. Right, so I really appreciated that. I'm gonna move up a question that we're gonna ask later because I think it kind of touches on what you're talking about. And this question is from Tomoka, who said how you and your son Sam served as ushers inspired her to be an usher here with her daughter. And she asks, one scene that I can't forget is when Noah takes his life after meeting his mother, Sonja, in Nagano. When you were writing, did you always intend for Noah's story to end this way, after his Korean identity was discovered?
So this is going to connect Russell's question too. But I had an entire manuscript of this book when I moved to Japan in 2007. And because I lived in Japan, I had to throw the whole thing away. Because it was a very angry book. Because I had only investigated all of the oppressive things. So Sonja did not exist. And Noah didn't exist at all in the first draft. So just imagine, and then to answer your question about Noah, to answer Tomoka's question about Noah, I really love this character, but what I really don't like about him is the rigidity of his thought. To believe that blood purity, that heredity and lineage should determine a person's life, his inability to forgive his mother was, I thought, so wrong. And then also, the greatest crime that Noah commits is lying about him. And I think that we can't live with ourselves if we lie about who we are. So if you take all that together, the fictional death of a character is allegorical to the author's belief that these ideologies must be extinguished. I don't know if that helps.
No,
Excellent answer. So many of you are curious as to what Minjin has been doing since Pachinko. Well, she's been working very, very hard on her third book, which concludes the trilogy on the experience of the Korean diaspora. And this one is called American Hagwon, and it's exploring the question of what does it mean to be wise through the lens of education. So my question, Minjin, is how has your faith, writing, and living on both sides of the Pacific informed the way that you think about wisdom?
You know, this book started because I was trying to explore what is a topic that Koreans care about more than any other topic. And just from meeting thousands of Koreans, it was very easy. We care about education. Like, this is it. And so I thought I was writing a book about education. But then it really became a question about wisdom. So to answer your question, being a transnational person, and everybody at TUC is a transnational person, you can't, as a transnational person, be simple about human beings. Because we know human beings are really illogical, irrational, and beautifully complicated. Because whenever you're living in Japan, Japanese people would tell me, well, in Japan, we don't do this. or only a Japanese person could say X, Y, or Z, or do these things. And then, of course, I would meet my friends who are Japanese American, and they would say, oh, no, we do that. So that level of clashing of these two kinds of statements immediately complicates our understanding of who we are. So there's a German theologian, his name is Gerhard von Rad, and his definition of wisdom is being competent to the realities of life. How are we competent to the realities of life? And as we know, our realities are constantly changing, which means that your competence has to constantly change. So when you think about a wise person, that person, like, why do you call Kathy in a crisis? Because she's competent. The complex reality of life. So when you think about a wise person, it's because they can take all the reality, all the complexity, and still be competent. As a Christian, Christ said that we should be as innocent as doves and as wise as serpents. I think that's being pretty competent to the realities of life.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that question and ask, why do you think education is a hill that Koreans die on? You know, do you think, I think I've heard President Obama, who had high regard for your book, praise Korean education during the State of the Union address. I think, do you think it's the fact that Korea has been the most Confucian country in the world that we are obsessed with education? What are you learning from your interviews and research?
So, I think Confucianism is a very important DNA aspect to this ancient civilization, which is what Korean is. It's an ancient civilization, deeply rooted with Confucianism. But I also think that its geographic positioning has always made it a place where many cultures can enter. So you have all this sort of diffuse information, but it's also a space in which there's so much oppression. Whether it's, and you're surrounded by all these giant countries. And yet, you have this population, if you include North Korea, and South Korea of 75 million people. And they are trying to survive. And they do it by figuring it out.
By studying and singing and dancing, right, Koreans?
Yeah, and I always find that to be really, I find it to be very moving. I find it to be moving that people want to survive.
Thank you. The next question will take us back to Lent. In this season of Lent, we'd love to hear more about the theme of redemptive suffering in Pachinko. The protagonist Sonja's life is full of suffering and hardship, yet her life still brims with blessings. How do you think about grace and love of God in a world groaning with personal and historical suffering?
I think this is a time where I feel really ashamed to be a Christian. I can't get over the brokenness. There's so much brokenness in this world. And it's interesting because when I was in Japan, I was invited by a bunch of journalists to a dinner. And there was I think an ambassador or some sort of dignitary person from Mexico, some important person, and was a bunch of journalists. And all the journalists were saying, gosh, things are terrible, terrible, they're terrible. And the important person from Mexico said, all those things have been happening forever. We just now know about them. And what he was talking about is the internet and the ever-present fire hose of news. If you are a happy person today, there is something wrong. Actually, I'm happy for you. But at every moment of joy, if you're conscious, you know that mothers can't feed their children in Sudan, that there is slavery in North Korea, that people in Gaza are homeless, that the hostages still haven't been returned, like from Israel, that the Ukrainian people are abandoned and betrayed, that people in democratic countries are afraid to speak. AI is terrifying. So now we know all the time. So grace and faith, if I didn't feel that grace and faith were possible, I don't know if I could. That said, earlier I had said that I'm very uncomfortable putting a God stamp on anything. Like, I've been very sick. I'm very well now. But I think I would hesitate to tell anybody who's sick, your suffering is what God wants, because it'll purify your prayer. Like, I would never say that. And if someone had said that to me, I would want to punch them. So I know intellectually, as a Christian, that somehow my suffering is something that God is working through me. However, I don't know exactly what the suffering is, And I don't always like it. I don't want to suffer. I don't want other people to. And I think that Christ wanted us to fight suffering, not just of our own, but of other people. So that's why I'm ashamed to be a Christian today, because I think that my attempts are so deeply inadequate to address suffering.
I actually have a follow-up related question to this, Min-jin, and I've heard you speak in the past about the importance of doubt in faith. And can you talk to us about how one reconciles, these two concepts or ideas? And I think every one of us has confronted this in the past, but can you talk a little bit about your own experience, doubt and faith?
Well, it's such an interesting intellectual balancing for people who are thinking about it. Because the essential thing that, I'm a Presbyterian. So I believe that we have this larger narrative of faith and fate. But I also believe very strongly that individuals have choice. So there's so much reason to have doubt. And every time I choose my faith, I think that I am enacting my faith. And that dynamic is so nourishing to me. I think if I didn't have doubt, then I'm not quite sure if I would respect my faith. For me.
So it's been a necessary element to deepen your faith.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for saying that better.
No, thank you.
And I know you've been teaching at Amherst College. You've been teaching writing there for a few years. I'm curious what you're learning about Gen Zs and Gen Alphas. And then for young adults here who are Christians, do you have any advice for them?
I'm not teaching this year, but I have taught at Amherst, and I have a long contract there. The reason I'm saying that is because sometimes kids apply to Amherst thinking they're going to meet me, take my class, and I'm almost always away, so I feel bad. But if I teach, I'm good enough to teach at Amherst. What have I learned? I think my students are, and it's not just my students, it's Gen Z. They're deeply anxious. And it's because there's too much information. We don't get a break. And the endless comparison, the need to be perfect, the over-reliance from the technocrats of datocracy, that we privilege data without understanding the application and interpretation of data. And you take these kinds of larger ideas, and as a young person, it's really hard to understand that, like, whether you get 10,000 likes or 2 likes, that one is not superior to the other. The idea of friend group And I point this out because if you are a young person in the audience, I want you to see the danger of friend groups. This is something that Kathy and I did not grow up with. If you had a friend, that was your friend. You did not silo them in one little space. And you did not have to have 50 silos in order to prove that you somehow matter. I'm going to say this in a church. That kind of thinking is bullshit. We must be critical of it. And I say this to you because when you're in the culture and someone says to you, your beliefs are only at church, those are your Christian, and those are your film studies friends, and those are your work friends. I'm telling you that you have siloed the most important part of your life. And I ask you to question it critically. I just said bullshit.
It's fine. We want you to be authentic, Rinjin.
Forgive me.
So, you mentioned earlier on about even from when you were a little girl, you always sort of felt God's presence. But as as anyone would go from being a little girl to, say, a teenager, I suspect, as I did, encounter a lot of unanswerable questions about God. So my question is, if you could tell your younger self one lesson you've learned about faith and about Christ, what would that lesson be?
That I'm enough.
That you're enough.
I'm enough. And I think that really reflects the idea that the work is finished. And if you think that you're enough, everything else is broken. Every kindness, every goodness, it's extra. But it wasn't me. So I love the idea of grace. And the definition of grace, unmerited favor. So we live in a world in which we want to quantify the idea of merit. And I like the idea of merit. But we all know that not all of us start at the same place. So the idea of establishing some of the quantifiers needs to be questioned.
Then my last question for you is, you have such exquisite descriptions of food and clothing in your works. So is there any cuisine and fashion of Tokyo that you missed that you think we should go check out?
This is so embarrassing. But one of my favorite things to eat in Japan is oden.
Oden. The one at the 7-Eleven oden, or a more refined version of oden?
No, that stuff is scary. All I think is like the bacterial soup.
24/7.
I'm sorry if I offended anybody. No, there was a tiny oden place I think it was an Azabu Juban.
Uh-huh.
And I remember when I was younger, it cost like $15 to have dinner. I really miss that. And as for fashion, I love Japanese fashion. Love. I realize I'm always wearing a white shirt in public.
That's your trademark.
It's easy. But all right. Now, after church, I used to walk to Comme des Garçons. I didn't buy things that often, but I used to always go, like at least twice a month, just to kind of like look at things. And I thought that the stuff that Ray Kawabuko designed were really beautiful.
And your color scheme, black and white. Minjin, can I ask you, would you be able to share? I know that, I don't know if it's public information that you've submitted American Hagwon to.
No.
Oh.
I'm submitting it in 6 weeks.
Okay, you didn't hear that.
You can, it's fine.
But it will be likely out in the public sphere
2026.
in 2026. So
I think so.
around 2026, so look out for that. But would you mind telling us about your next project that you're already working on? I don't know if it's fair for you to share.
Oh. So my next novel is American Hagwon, and I'm submitting it in a few weeks. Pray for me.
We'll be praying.
No, really.
We will be praying.
Like, if I can be added to your list.
We will add you to our prayer circle. Done.
No, you think I'm kidding. I'm kind of a wreck about this. So after I submit that, I'm probably going to have to rework it a few times. That's how it normally works. And it might come out it'll probably come out fall, winter,
Fall, winter 2026.
but then after that book, I'm thinking if I write another novel, it would be called Marshall Plan. And it's about the Koreans in Germany. And it'll be the European theater, which I did not yet. And I really want to think about what it means to earn money in one country, to build another country. And every person is an expatriate. You know what I mean?
Yep. That's very exciting. We're so.
Yeah, we look forward to it. And I
Yeah.
guess the common thread with Chainichi would be the miners. Right? A lot of Koreans came to Japan as miners and then to Germany also. So yeah, we look forward to seeing.
Have you ever had a chance to go through the tunnels in Jeju?
No. Why do you ask? What's it like?
Well, or if anybody in the audience, have you ever been to the DMZ tunnel?
I've been to the DMZ, but not the tunnel.
Yeah, if you go to the tunnel, it's so moving. To think that men, and I believe it was men, dug those tunnels without any modern machinery. And if you go to the Jeju tunnel, they're lower than the DMZ tunnels. And it must have been so difficult to make them. And I found myself so moved because you can see that actual like handiwork, like shovels, and you could see all of it. And also, there were spaces for people to hide from being attacked. So they have little room. And I just thought a lot about fear. how afraid the men must have been working, how afraid the men must have been of getting killed. And this is all very recent.
Can I ask one more question that wasn't on the prepared list, but you have been awarded in South Korea by the government, I know, with national recognition for your work, but how, when you go back home to South Korea, what's the reception been? I'm just curious, is it, overwhelmingly, oh my God, we love you, thanks for telling us about our story, or are there people that are more maybe critical, or just curious, what's been your kind of, the reaction to your work and when you go back?
I get so much love. It's so moving. And I'm always embarrassed because I don't know what to do with it. Like, I cry a lot. I mean, I cry a lot regularly. And I cry a lot in public because I don't know what to do with all the feeling. But I've been given so much recognition. Yeah, and I feel so grateful. Like, so Pachinko has been published by the government to be distributed to the Army Library.
Oh, wow.
And when that happened, I was so, shocked that an American could write a book and that the Korean government thought their soldiers should have the opportunity to read it.
Amazing.
So that was like a real unexpected thing.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question also. I'm curious how the reception of your work among the Chinese Koreans in Japan have been when you go back to your interview subjects with your work. How do they respond to it?
The Zainichi people?
Yeah, Chinese Koreans in Japan, how they've received your work.
I've received a lot of letters. And I think they see how much I care. And then I get all the love. I get so much detail. Because what happens is that a younger person will read the book and they'll start talking to their family members who are Korean Japanese.
Right.
And they'll verify the work that I've done. So then, about the museum having my book and stuff, it's because they thought that it was accurate. So all the energy that I spent, all the money, I mean, this is going to sound silly, but there were times when I really needed money. And the opportunity cost of not being an attorney for 20 years. So I felt like it was okay to have spent that time. So when I get the letters from a Korean Japanese person saying, I don't feel ashamed of my past, then I feel like, oh, I did something that mattered. So I feel like I'm tooting my own horn here. Oh, sorry.
All well-deserved recognition, honor, so congratulations. Wrap it up?
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today, Min-jin. Is there anything you'd like to add before we
Well, we're going to have a
sign
close,
off?
but
We're gonna
I
close.
gave up chocolate for Lent. And I hope you guys have the amazing chocolate of Japan today and think of me.
and we will all be praying for American Hagwon successful
Please.
release. I think we're going to close now with Pastor Hector Herrera. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Min-jin,
thank you,
for
Min-jin.
joining us today.
also like to thank and give everyone a round of applause to not only Jin Lee, but also Kathy Matsui, JY, Kana Mitane, Jonathan O, and the AV team, and for you coming on this day. I'm just so thankful. If we could just extend a round of applause. As Christians, we're also thankful for what God did for us, entering the doors of Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, showing us what it meant to come at a table on Maundy Thursday, dying for us on Good Friday, being gone on Holy Saturday, and then bringing resurrection and hope for us on Easter Sunday. And this week is Holy Week. So you are all invited to attend our services. That will be today at 11 o'clock, right after this. Maundy Thursday at 7:30, in person and online. Good Friday as well, 7:30, in person and online. And on Sunday, we will have 3 services at 8:30 in the morning, at 10, and 11:30, in person and online. You are all welcome to come, and I'm just so thankful that you are here and that you are present, and so thankful for everyone to make this possible. So let us now end the session with a prayer. Oh Lord, you are the giver of all good gifts, and we are so thankful that you've joined us not only here in Japan, but from people all around the world as we get to hear the story and wisdom of Jin Lee. May we treasure this, and may this inspire us to live out our faith. We give you thanks and pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you so much.